Let us journey together now, back through the mists of time, more than 2,000 years into the past, to a place where philosophy was born not in quiet libraries, but in the warm, dusty streets of ancient Athens. Picture, if you will, the morning sun rising over the Acropolis, casting long golden shadows across the agora, the great marketplace at the heart of the city. Here, among the vendors selling olives and pottery, among the politicians and poets, among the citizens debating the affairs of their democracy, walks a man unlike any other. His name is Socrates, and he is barefoot, as always, his simple tunic worn and weathered, his appearance unremarkable to those who do not yet know him. But this unassuming figure will change the course of human thought forever. Socrates was born around 470 years before the Common Era in Athens during its golden age, when art and culture flourished like the olive groves surrounding the city. His father was a stonemason, his mother a midwife, and from these humble origins came a mind that would question everything. Unlike the sophists of his time, who charged fees to teach rhetoric and persuasion, Socrates claimed to possess no wisdom at all. This claim, this profound admission of ignorance, was not modesty, but the very foundation of his philosophy. For Socrates understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding, that true wisdom begins only when we recognize how little we actually know. As we watch him move through the agora this morning, let yourself feel the warm Mediterranean air. Notice the scent of fresh bread baking. Hear the gentle murmur of conversation flowing around him like a river. He stops now beside a merchant, not to buy anything, but to ask a simple question. What is virtue? The merchant pauses, perhaps annoyed at first, perhaps intrigued, and so it begins, this gentle, relentless questioning that will become known to history as the Socratic method. Socrates asks and listens and asks again, peeling away assumptions like layers of an onion, always seeking the essence beneath. He has no agenda except truth, no goal except understanding, and this purity of purpose draws people to him as surely as the sun draws flowers toward the light. The story of how Socrates came to his mission is itself a tale worth resting upon, worth letting wash over you like gentle waves upon a shore. His friend Chaerephon, devoted and curious, once traveled to the oracle at Delphi, that sacred place where the priestess of Apollo delivered prophecies, shrouded in mystery and meaning. Chaerephon asked the oracle a simple question: is anyone wiser than Socrates? And the oracle, speaking through the priestess in her sacred trance, delivered an answer that would puzzle and ultimately transform Socrates forever. No, the oracle said, no one is wiser than Socrates. When Socrates heard this pronouncement, he was bewildered, genuinely confused, for he knew with absolute certainty that he possessed no special wisdom. He knew nothing, or so he believed, of the great truths of the universe. And so he set out on a mission, a divine mission, as he came to understand it, to prove the oracle wrong. He would find someone wiser than himself and demonstrate that the god had made an error. With this purpose filling his days, Socrates began to seek out those with reputations for wisdom. He spoke with the politicians, those men who governed Athens, and made decisions affecting thousands of lives. Surely they would possess wisdom. But as he questioned them, gently, persistently, always with that slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, he discovered something troubling. These politicians believed themselves wise, but when pressed to explain their beliefs, to defend their assumptions, to define the very concepts they used so confidently, they could not. They knew less than they thought they knew, and worse still, they did not recognize their ignorance. Socrates left these encounters more puzzled than before. Next, he sought out the poets, those inspired creators whose beautiful verses moved audiences to tears and transported them to realms of gods and heroes. Surely the poets possessed wisdom from the divine. But when Socrates asked them to explain the meaning of their own words, they stumbled. Their poetry came from inspiration, from something they could not fully articulate or understand. They created beauty, yes, but they could not explain it, could not defend it, could not truly say they understood it. And finally, Socrates turned to the craftsmen, the artisans who made the furniture, the pottery, the tools that filled Athenian life. Here, at last, he found genuine knowledge. The craftsmen truly understood their crafts. A cobbler knew about making shoes. A carpenter knew about working wood. But then Socrates noticed something else. Because they possessed this genuine expertise in their particular domain, the craftsmen believed they were wise about everything else as well. They confused specific knowledge with universal wisdom. And so, through these many conversations, these gentle interrogations that left his subjects confused and sometimes irritated, Socrates finally understood what the oracle meant. He was wisest not because he knew more than others, but because he alone recognized the limits of his knowledge. He alone understood that he did not know. This recognition, this honest acknowledgment of ignorance, was the beginning of true wisdom. It was a kind of knowledge about knowledge itself, a meta-awareness that created the space for genuine learning. For if you believe you already know something, you cannot learn it. Your supposed knowledge blocks the doorway to true understanding. But if you recognize your ignorance, if you admit with humility that you do not know, then you create an opening, a space into which wisdom might enter. This realization became the foundation of everything Socrates taught, though he never called it teaching. He insisted always that he taught nothing, that he only helped others give birth to ideas that were already within them. This, too, he learned from his mother, the midwife. Just as she helped bring forth physical life, he would help bring forth intellectual life, ideas and understanding that his companions carried within themselves without knowing it. Let yourself rest now in this image of Socrates in the agora, the afternoon sun warm on the white stone buildings, the shadows growing longer and cooler. He sits on a low wall surrounded by young men of Athens, the youth who are drawn to him like iron to a lodestone. They sit at his feet, not because he demands it, but because they choose to, because something in his questions awakens something in them, something they did not know was sleeping. Socrates asks a young man named Euthyphro about piety. What is piety? The young man answers confidently at first. Piety is what the gods love. But Socrates, with infinite patience, asks another question. Do the gods love piety because it is pious, or is it pious because the gods love it? The young man pauses, considers, realizes the question is more complex than it first appeared. And in that pause, in that moment of uncertainty, learning becomes possible. This is the Socratic method in action, this gentle unraveling of assumptions, this careful examination of what we think we know. Socrates does not lecture. He does not present theories. He asks questions, follows the logic where it leads, and helps his companions discover the inconsistencies in their own thinking. What makes Socrates so remarkable, what makes his approach so revolutionary even now, across all these centuries, is his absolute commitment to rational inquiry and his unwavering faith that virtue and knowledge are intimately connected. He believed with a conviction that never wavered that no one does wrong knowingly. If someone acts badly, it is because they do not truly understand what is good. They are ignorant of the good, not opposed to it. If they truly knew what was good, they would pursue it as naturally as a plant turns towards sunlight. This idea might seem strange to us at first, lying here in the peaceful darkness, considering our own experiences of choosing what we know we should not choose. But Socrates would gently question even this. Do we truly know something is wrong when we do it, or do we only know it in an abstract way, while in the moment some other desire, some other false knowledge, persuades us that this choice right now is actually good? His questions would lead us deeper, always deeper, peeling away our confident answers until we reached either genuine understanding or honest bewilderment. And bewilderment for Socrates was progress. To know that you are confused is better than to remain confidently wrong. Confusion is the doorway through which truth might enter. As evening approaches in our imagined Athens, the agora begins to empty. Merchants pack their wares. Politicians return to their homes. But Socrates remains, still talking, still questioning, seemingly tireless in his pursuit of understanding. His commitment to philosophy was total. He wrote nothing down himself, believing that written words were dead things that could not respond to questions or clarify themselves. True philosophy, for Socrates, existed only in living dialogue, in the give and take of conversation, in the spark that ignites when two minds genuinely engage with important questions. He lived simply, very simply, caring nothing for wealth or comfort. He wore the same worn tunic year after year. He walked barefoot through streets and snow alike. He ate simple food and drank water more often than wine. None of the material things that others pursued interested him at all. His only pursuit was understanding, his only wealth the examined life. And this indifference to conventional success, this complete disregard for what others thought of him, gave Socrates a kind of freedom that most people never experience. He could speak truth to power because power held nothing over him. He could question anyone because he wanted nothing from them except honest conversation. He could follow the argument wherever it led because he had no predetermined conclusion to defend. Let us rest now with one of Socrates' most famous declarations, words that echo still through the centuries, words worth contemplating as you drift toward sleep. The unexamined life, he said, is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. What a bold statement, what a radical claim about the very purpose of human existence. Socrates believed that the quality of our lives depends not on wealth or fame or pleasure, but on how deeply we think about them, how carefully we examine our beliefs and values and choices. A life lived without reflection, without questioning, without examining our assumptions and testing our beliefs, such a life is barely worth living at all. It is a life lived on the surface of things, never diving deep, never discovering the treasures that lie beneath. But to examine your life, to truly examine it, requires courage. It requires the willingness to discover that you might be wrong about things you felt certain of. It requires the humility to admit ignorance. It requires the patience to sit with difficult questions that have no easy answers. And this is what Socrates offered to Athens, and through Athens to the world, and through the world to you, lying here now in the peaceful darkness. He offered a method for living consciously, for thinking carefully, for pursuing wisdom, even knowing that perfect wisdom might always remain just beyond our grasp. As the stars begin to emerge over ancient Athens, as the last light fades from the sky and the city settles into its evening rhythms, Socrates makes his way home through the quiet streets. His feet, bare and tough from years of walking, know every stone. His mind, active and questioning, continues to turn over the day's conversations, considering new angles, discovering new questions to explore tomorrow. He does not know, cannot know, that he will become one of the most influential thinkers in human history. He knows only that he must continue his mission, must continue to examine himself and help others examine themselves, must continue to ask questions about virtue and justice and the good life. This is his purpose, his divine calling, and he pursues it with absolute dedication. So rest now with Socrates in the warm Athenian night, under those ancient stars that still shine today. Rest with his questions, his gentle, relentless questions. Rest with his admission that wisdom begins in knowing that we do not know. Rest with his conviction that an examined life, a thoughtful life, a life spent in pursuit of virtue and understanding, is the only life truly worth living. Let these thoughts settle over you like a soft blanket. Let them quiet your mind. The questions will still be there tomorrow. For now, rest. Simply rest. And as you rest with these questions, we find ourselves drawn deeper into the world of Socrates, into the very heart of his method. The morning in the agora has given way to afternoon, and the philosopher has moved to a quieter place, seeking shade from the Mediterranean sun. Imagine now a cool colonnade along the edge of the marketplace where tall marble columns create alternating bands of shadow and light. Here, beneath these ancient pillars, Socrates has found a willing companion for conversation. Perhaps it is a young man eager to prove his knowledge, or an older citizen confident in his understanding of virtue. It matters little who stands before the philosopher. What matters is what follows, the gentle dance of question and answer that will reveal something profound. Feel yourself settling into this scene, breathing in the cooler air of the shaded walkway. The noise of the agora becomes distant, a soft murmur like waves upon a shore. Socrates begins, as he always begins, with a simple question. "Tell me," he asks his companion, "what is courage?" The young man answers quickly, confidently. Courage is standing firm in battle, not fleeing from the enemy. Socrates nods, considering this answer with genuine interest. His voice is soft, encouraging. "But tell me," he continues, "if a general orders a tactical retreat to save his soldiers, is this cowardice?" The young man pauses. "No, that would be wisdom." So courage is not simply standing firm, Socrates reflects gently. Could it be that courage is a kind of knowledge, knowing when to stand and when to withdraw? The conversation unfolds like a flower opening, petal by petal. There is no rush here, no urgency. Each question leads naturally to the next, and with each exchange, something that seemed certain becomes less so. Something that seemed simple reveals its complexity. This is the Socratic method, this gentle erosion of false certainty, this patient excavation of truth. And here in this shaded colonnade, you can feel the peace that comes from honest inquiry. Socrates never claims to have the answers. He is merely asking questions, following the argument wherever it leads. His companion, who began so confident, now speaks more slowly, more thoughtfully. The mask of false knowledge has been removed, and beneath it lies something more valuable than certainty. Beneath it lies the recognition of what we do not yet understand. And this recognition, Socrates believes, is the beginning of wisdom. Let yourself rest in this rhythm of question and answer. Let the gentle cadence of philosophical dialogue wash over you like a calm tide. There is something deeply soothing about this method, this way of thinking that never forces, never insists, but only asks, only wonders. Socrates treats each person with respect, as though they might indeed possess the wisdom they claim. And when their claims dissolve under gentle questioning, there is no humiliation, only the shared discovery that perhaps we must think more deeply, perhaps we must look more carefully at what we believe we know. The shadows lengthen slightly along the colonnade. Time passes in this peaceful space of inquiry, and you, resting here, need not follow every turn of the argument. You need only absorb the atmosphere, the feeling of this ancient conversation, the calm certainty that seeking truth together is one of the highest human activities. Let the sounds of distant Athens fade even further. Let the rhythm of Socratic questioning become like a meditation, like a gentle pattern that quiets the restless mind. Question and answer, like breath flowing in and out, natural as the tide. As the conversation continues in this peaceful colonnade, we begin to understand what makes Socrates so remarkable, so revolutionary in the history of thought. It is not that he provides answers, it is that he shows us how to question, how to examine our most basic assumptions about life and virtue and knowledge. Let yourself sink deeper into this understanding, feeling the wisdom of this approach settling into your awareness like sediment drifting to the bottom of a still pool. Socrates has moved on to another question now, or perhaps another companion has joined him. The specific details blur and soften, as they should in this restful state. What matters is the pattern, the method, the gentle persistence of inquiry. Tell me, Socrates asks, what is justice? And again, confident answers come forward. Justice is giving each person what they deserve. Justice is following the laws of the city. Justice is helping friends and harming enemies. Socrates listens to each definition with that same patient attention, that same genuine curiosity. And then, gently, so gently, he begins to probe. If a friend has gone mad and asks for his weapon back, is it just to return it? If a law is unjust, should we still follow it? If we harm our enemies, do we make them better or worse? And if we make them worse, are we truly acting justly? Each question opens another door, reveals another corridor of thought. The companion who spoke so confidently now finds himself in unfamiliar territory, uncertain which way leads forward. But there is no shame in this uncertainty. Socrates shares it. I do not know what justice is, he admits freely. That is why I ask. That is why we must inquire together. And in this admission, in this radical honesty about the limits of his knowledge, Socrates offers something profound. He offers freedom from the burden of false certainty. He offers the peace that comes from acknowledging what we do not know. Let this peace settle over you now, this recognition that you need not have all the answers, that the questions themselves are valuable, that seeking wisdom is more important than claiming it. The afternoon grows deeper and more golden. The shadows from the columns stretch longer across the marble floor. There is a timeless quality to this scene, as though these conversations have been happening forever, as though they will continue long after the sun sets and rises again. And in a sense, they will. The questions Socrates asks are eternal questions. What is virtue? What is the good life? How should we live? What makes an action right or wrong? These are not questions that can be answered once and forgotten. They are questions we must return to again and again, questions that shape our lives through the very act of asking them. Socrates understood this. He understood that philosophy is not a destination, but a journey, not a conclusion, but a continuous inquiry. And this understanding brings its own kind of rest, its own kind of peace. You need not solve all the problems of existence before you sleep. You need only recognize that the examined life, the questioning life, is a life lived with awareness and intention. The sound of voices in the agora has grown even softer now, a distant murmur that no longer draws your attention. Here in the shade of the colonnade, the world has contracted to this simple scene, this gentle exchange of ideas, this patient search for understanding. And Socrates continues to question, continues to wonder, his voice never rising, never insisting, always inviting his companion to think more deeply, to look more carefully, to examine what has always been assumed. Let the rhythm of this questioning become a lullaby, a soft repetition that carries you deeper into calm. In this deepening afternoon, beneath these ancient columns, we come to understand one of Socrates' most important teachings, a teaching about the soul and its care. Let yourself rest even more deeply now, allowing these ideas to wash over you without effort, without strain. Socrates believed that we are not primarily our bodies, but our souls. The body is temporary, changing, destined to age and fade. But the soul, the essence of who we are, our capacity for reason and virtue and understanding, this is what truly matters. And just as we care for our bodies through proper food and exercise, we must care for our souls through right thinking and virtuous action. This is what Socrates spent his life teaching, this care of the soul. The unexamined life is not worth living, he famously declared, because a life without self-reflection, without questioning, without the pursuit of wisdom and virtue, is a life in which the soul remains neglected, untended, like a garden left to grow wild. But how do we care for the soul, Socrates would ask. And here his method comes full circle, returning to what it revealed from the beginning. We care for the soul through knowledge, through understanding, through the continual examination of our beliefs and actions. We care for the soul by seeking virtue, by trying to understand what virtue is, by living according to that understanding. Let this idea settle into your awareness like moonlight settling over still water. The care of the soul. It is such a beautiful phrase, such a calming concept. In our busy lives we attend to so many things, so many urgent demands and pressing concerns. But how often do we pause to consider the state of our soul? How often do we examine our deepest beliefs, our fundamental values, the principles by which we actually live? Socrates made this examination his life's work. He questioned everyone he met because he believed that dialogue, honest inquiry, the patient pursuit of understanding, this is how the soul grows and develops. This is how we become more fully human. And there is something deeply peaceful about this conviction, this belief that knowledge leads to virtue, that understanding makes us better. Socrates held an almost childlike faith in the power of reason. If someone truly understands what is good, he believed, they will do what is good. No one does wrong willingly, he taught. We do wrong only out of ignorance, only because we do not truly understand what is good for us, what will genuinely benefit our souls. This may seem optimistic, perhaps even naive. But in this moment, in this restful state, allow yourself to feel the peace that comes from this worldview. Imagine that all wrong action stems from misunderstanding, from lack of knowledge. Imagine that the path to virtue is simply the path to understanding. How much lighter this makes the burden of being human. We need not struggle against our evil nature. We need only seek to understand more clearly, to know more deeply, to examine more thoroughly. The afternoon light has grown softer now, more golden, more gentle. The marble columns seem to glow with stored warmth from the sun. Socrates continues his conversations, patient and unhurried, as though there is all the time in the world to seek wisdom, all the time in the world to care for the soul. And in a sense, there is. The care of the soul is not a task to be completed, but a way of life to be embraced. Each day offers new opportunities for self-examination, for questioning, for growth in understanding. And each night offers this opportunity for rest, for letting the day's questions settle, for trusting that the pursuit of wisdom will continue tomorrow. Let yourself trust this rhythm, this alternation between seeking and resting, between questioning and peace. As the afternoon deepens toward evening, we find Socrates engaged in what may be his most important conversation, a discussion about virtue itself. What is virtue? This is the question that animated his entire life, the question he returned to again and again with different companions in different places. And here, in the cooling shade of the colonnade, with the sun beginning its slow descent toward the sea, he asks it once more. But listen now to how gently the question is posed, how peacefully it unfolds. Socrates does not demand an answer. He invites exploration. He suggests that perhaps virtue is a kind of knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil, the understanding of what truly benefits the soul. If this is so, he muses quietly, then virtue can be taught. If virtue is knowledge, then education, in the deepest sense, the care and cultivation of the soul, becomes the most important task of human life. But here a difficulty arises, as it so often does in Socratic conversations. If virtue is knowledge, why are there so few virtuous people? Why do the children of good parents not always become good themselves? Why does knowledge of what is right not always lead to right action? These questions float in the air like motes of dust in slanting sunlight, not demanding immediate answers, but inviting continued reflection. Perhaps, Socrates suggests, virtue is not knowledge in the ordinary sense. Perhaps it is a kind of wisdom, a deeper understanding that cannot simply be transferred from teacher to student like information. Perhaps virtue must be awakened within each soul through questioning, through self-examination, through the lived experience of seeking goodness. Let yourself rest in this uncertainty, this acknowledgement that the deepest truths may not be simple, may not be easily grasped or quickly taught. There is peace in this, the recognition that wisdom takes time, that the care of the soul is the work of a lifetime. Socrates did not promise quick enlightenment or easy answers. He promised only that the search itself was worthwhile, that the examined life was the only life worth living. And as you rest here in this ancient scene, beneath these columns, listening to the soft murmur of philosophical conversation, you can feel the truth of this promise. There is something deeply satisfying about honest inquiry, about the patient pursuit of understanding. There is something that nourishes the soul in the simple act of questioning, in the willingness to admit ignorance, in the courage to examine our most basic assumptions. The light continues to soften, continues to grow more golden and more gentle. Shadows lengthen across the marble floor. The day is releasing its hold, allowing evening to approach. And in this transition, in this gentle movement from afternoon to dusk, there is a lesson about virtue itself. Virtue, Socrates suggests, is like this light, something that must be cultivated gradually, something that develops through patient attention, through daily practice, through continuous self-examination. We do not become virtuous all at once, in a single moment of revelation. We become virtuous slowly, through repeated acts of reflection and choice, through the ongoing commitment to care for our souls. And this slow development, this gradual cultivation, is not a burden, but a source of peace. You need not be perfectly virtuous today. You need not have achieved complete wisdom or absolute understanding. You need only be committed to the journey, to the examination, to the continuous care of your soul. This is enough. This is what Socrates asked of himself and others. Not perfection, but honest seeking. Not certainty, but genuine questioning. Not the end of the journey, but the willingness to continue walking. Let this gentle teaching settle over you like the evening air, cool and peaceful and refreshing. Let it quiet any anxiety about who you should be or what you should have achieved. The care of the soul is not a race or a competition. It is a way of being, a way of living, a commitment to awareness and virtue that can begin anew each day, each moment. As evening begins to settle over Athens, as the last golden light touches the tops of the columns and the shadows grow long and soft, we come to rest with the core of Socratic wisdom. The conversations have continued throughout the day, question following answer, following question, each exchange revealing more about what we do not know than what we do. And this, finally, is the great gift of Socrates. Not a system of beliefs to memorize, not a set of rules to follow, but a method of inquiry, a way of living, a commitment to the examined life. Let yourself settle more deeply now, allowing these ideas to fade into feeling, allowing the specifics to dissolve into atmosphere. The details of the arguments no longer matter. What matters is the peace that comes from understanding that the search for wisdom is itself a form of wisdom, that the acknowledgement of ignorance is the beginning of knowledge, that the care of the soul is the highest human calling. Socrates stands in the colonnade as the day releases its last light. His conversations have ended, or perhaps they continue in a softer voice, barely audible now. The agora has grown quiet. Merchants are closing their stalls. Citizens are making their way home through narrow streets. But here, beneath these columns, there is a sense of timelessness, a feeling that these questions and this method of inquiry will continue long after this particular day has ended. And they have continued. For more than 2,000 years, the voice of Socrates has echoed through history, asking its questions, inviting examination, urging the care of the soul. The specific words may have changed, The language may have transformed, but the essential teaching remains: know thyself. The unexamined life is not worth living. Virtue is knowledge. The care of the soul is paramount. Let these phrases wash over you now like waves on a peaceful shore, each one arriving and departing in a gentle rhythm. Know thyself, examine your life, care for your soul, seek virtue, pursue wisdom, admit ignorance, question assumptions, live thoughtfully. These are not commands but invitations, not demands but gentle suggestions for how to live a life of meaning and purpose. And as the last light fades from the colonnade, as the day finally gives way to evening, you can feel yourself beginning to transition as well, moving from the active consideration of ideas toward the passive rest of sleep. The philosophy of Socrates does not resist this transition, it welcomes it. For rest, true rest, is itself a kind of wisdom. It is the recognition that we cannot think all the time, cannot question every moment, cannot examine without pause. We must also stop, must also be still, must also allow the soul to rest in the certainty that the questions will be there tomorrow, that the examined life can resume with the new day. So let yourself rest now as ancient Athens rests. As the agora grows silent, as the conversations fade into memory, the wisdom of Socrates will remain, his method will continue, his questions will echo through the centuries. But for now, for this moment, for this peaceful evening, you need only rest. Rest in the knowledge that you have begun to care for your soul simply by considering these questions. Rest in the peace of honest inquiry. Rest in the gentle rhythm of question and answer, like breath flowing in and out, like waves upon the shore, like the alternation of day and night, examination and rest, seeking and finding, questioning and peace. The colonnade is almost dark now. The columns are becoming shadows. And in this darkness, in this quiet, there is profound peace. The kind of peace that comes from living thoughtfully, from examining your life, from caring for your soul. This is the gift of Socrates. This is the wisdom that continues to speak across the centuries. And this is where we rest now, in the gentle certainty that the examined life, the thoughtful life, the life of honest inquiry, is indeed the only life worth living. Rest now. Simply rest. The questions will wait. The care of the soul continues even in sleep. Even now, you are exactly where you need to be. And so we move gently forward in time, though not very far, just a generation or so, from the agora where Socrates questioned to a quieter place, a more contemplative sanctuary. We are leaving the crowded marketplace behind and walking slowly, peacefully, along a dusty path that leads northwest from Athens, toward a grove of olive trees that shimmer silver green in the Mediterranean light. Here, in this sacred grove dedicated to the hero Academus, Plato established his school, the Academy, around 387 years before the Common Era. The air is different here, softer somehow, filtered through ancient olive branches that have witnessed countless philosophical discussions, countless moments of insight and wonder. You can almost hear the rustle of papyrus scrolls, the gentle murmur of students engaged in dialogue, the patient voice of a teacher guiding young minds toward eternal truths. Plato was born into an aristocratic Athenian family around 428, before the Common Era, a world of privilege and expectation. Yet he chose philosophy over politics, wisdom over power. He was a wrestler in his youth, strong and athletic, and some say his name itself, Plato, derives from his broad shoulders or broad forehead. But it was his encounter with Socrates that changed everything, that set his soul on fire with the love of wisdom. For 8 years he was Socrates' devoted student, absorbing every question, every paradox, every challenge to conventional thinking. And when his beloved teacher was executed by the Athenian state in 399, Plato was devastated, shaken to his core. How could the wisest man be condemned by those he sought to help? How could justice be so perverted? These questions drove him to travel, to Egypt, to Italy, to Syracuse, seeking wisdom, seeking answers, seeking some way to make sense of the tragedy, and gradually, gently, his own philosophy began to take shape, a philosophy that would honor his teacher while reaching beyond him towards something eternal and unchanging. The academy was Plato's answer, his way of preserving and extending Socratic wisdom, his vision of how philosophy should be taught and practiced. It was not just a school, but a community, a brotherhood of seekers, where students and teachers lived and learned together, sharing meals and ideas, geometry and dialectic, music and mathematics. Above the entrance, they say, was inscribed, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." For Plato believed that mathematics was the bridge between the physical world we see and touch and the eternal realm of perfect forms that exists beyond our senses. Rest here for a moment, in this olive grove, feeling the dappled shade, the gentle breeze, the sense of timeless inquiry that permeates this place. In this peaceful grove, beneath these ancient trees, Plato developed his most famous and mysterious teaching, the theory of forms. It is a beautiful idea, a soothing idea in its way, because it suggests that beyond this changing, imperfect world of physical things there exists another realm, eternal and perfect, where the true essence of all things resides. Imagine it gently. When you see a beautiful flower, or a beautiful face, or a beautiful sunset, what is it that makes it beautiful? Plato would say that all these particular beautiful things participate in, or reflect, the form of beauty itself, an eternal, unchanging, perfect beauty that exists beyond space and time. The flower fades, the face ages, the sunset ends, but beauty itself never changes, never diminishes, never dies. This is true for all qualities, all concepts. There is a form of justice, a form of goodness, a form of courage, and yes, even forms of simple things like tables and trees and circles. The physical objects we perceive with our senses are merely shadows, imperfect copies of these perfect forms. It is a striking reversal of how we usually think. We tend to believe that the physical world is real and ideas are abstract, but Plato insists that the opposite is true. The forms are real, permanent, eternal, while the physical world is fleeting, imperfect, almost dreamlike in its constant change. And this means that true knowledge is not about studying the physical world, not about observing this tree or that tree, but about grasping the eternal form of tree itself through reason and contemplation. This is why geometry was so important to Plato. When you prove something about a triangle, you are not proving something about this particular triangle drawn in the sand, which will be washed away by the next rain. You are proving something about the form of triangle, something eternally and necessarily true, and the soul, Plato believed, has a special relationship with these forms. Before we are born, our souls exist in that eternal realm, contemplating the forms directly. Then we are born into these physical bodies, and we forget what we once knew. But learning, for Plato, is really remembering, recollecting what the soul once knew but has temporarily forgotten. This is why we can recognize beauty when we see it, why we have an innate sense of justice even when the world around us is unjust. We are remembering, however dimly, the perfect forms our souls once knew. It is such a gentle thought, isn't it? That learning is not acquiring something foreign, but remembering something deeply familiar, something that belongs to the very essence of who you are. Rest in this idea. Let it settle softly into your mind. You are not empty, waiting to be filled. You are already complete, waiting only to remember. To help his students understand this radical vision, Plato created allegories, beautiful stories that illuminate philosophical truths. The most famous of these is the allegory of the cave, found in his dialogue, The Republic, and it is a perfect image for peaceful contemplation, a story to sink into as you rest. Imagine a cave, deep underground, where prisoners have been chained since childhood, unable to turn their heads, able to see only the wall in front of them. Behind them burns a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners, people carry objects back and forth. The prisoners see only the shadows these objects cast on the wall, and because they have seen nothing else, they believe these shadows are reality itself. They give the shadows names, they study the patterns of the shadows, they become experts in shadow knowledge. But it is not true knowledge, because shadows are not real things. They are merely projections, dim reflections of something more substantial. Now imagine that one prisoner is freed. He turns around painfully because his muscles are stiff from lifelong confinement. He sees the fire, and it hurts his eyes. He sees the objects being carried, and he is confused, disoriented. This cannot be real, he thinks. The shadows are real. But gradually, gently, his eyes adjust. He begins to understand that these objects are more real than the shadows they cast. Then his liberator leads him up, out of the cave, and this is even more painful. The sunlight is blinding. He can look at nothing directly, but slowly, with patience, he learns to see. First he looks at shadows and reflections in water. Then he looks at objects themselves. Finally he can look up at the sky, the stars, and eventually even the sun itself. And he realizes that the sun is the source of all light, all vision, all life in the world above. In Plato's allegory, the sun represents the form of the good, the highest form, the source of all truth and reality and knowledge. The journey from the cave into the sunlight is the philosopher's journey from ignorance to knowledge, from belief in the physical world to understanding of the forms. And notice how gentle the process must be. You cannot drag someone from darkness into full sunlight all at once. They must be led patiently, gradually, allowing their eyes to adjust at each stage. This is how education works, Plato believed. Not by pouring information into empty vessels, but by gently turning the soul toward the light, helping it remember and recognize what it already in its depths knows. And there is more to the allegory. The freed prisoner, now enlightened, feels compassion for those still in the cave. He returns to free them, to share what he has learned. But when he enters the darkness again, his eyes, accustomed to sunlight, cannot see well in the shadows. The prisoners think he has been harmed by his journey upward. They mock him, distrust him, and if he tries to free them by force, they might even kill him. Plato is thinking of Socrates here, of course, the wise man who returned to enlighten his fellow citizens and was executed for his trouble. It is a sad element in a beautiful story, but even this sadness is gentle, philosophical, a reminder that truth is not always welcomed, that the path of wisdom can be lonely. But still, the philosopher returns. Still, out of love and duty, he tries to help. Rest now in this image of the cave, the fire, the long journey upward into light. Let yourself be that traveler, moving slowly, gently, toward illumination. Plato did not only theorize about eternal forms and the journey toward truth, he also asked practical questions about how human beings should live together, how society should be organized, what justice means not just for the individual soul, but for the community. In his great work, The Republic, he imagines an ideal state, a city governed by wisdom rather than by force or wealth or mere tradition. It is a thought experiment, a philosophical exploration, and while many of its details may seem strange or even troubling to us now, its core intention is beautiful. To envision a society where justice prevails, where each person contributes according to their nature, where reason rules over passion and appetite. Plato divides the soul into three parts, and this division mirrors his vision of the ideal state. There is the rational part, which seeks truth and wisdom, the spirited part, which seeks honor and courage, and the appetitive part, which seeks physical pleasures and necessities. In a just soul, reason rules, spirit supports reason, and appetite is moderated and channeled appropriately. Similarly, in the ideal state, there are three classes: the guardians or philosopher kings, who possess wisdom and govern, the auxiliaries or warriors, who possess courage and defend, and the producers, farmers, and craftspeople who provide for material needs. Justice, for Plato, consists in each part doing its proper work, neither overstepping nor neglecting its role. It is a vision of harmony, balance, order. The most radical aspect of Plato's ideal state is his insistence that it should be ruled by philosophers, by those who have made the difficult journey out of the cave, who have contemplated the forms, who understand the good itself. Only those who do not desire power, who would prefer to remain in philosophical contemplation, should be entrusted with power. Only those who see beyond personal gain, beyond political maneuvering, beyond the shadows on the wall, can govern justly. It is a beautiful dream, even if history has shown it difficult, perhaps impossible, to realize. But Plato was not naive. He knew that the ideal state might never exist in the physical world, but that does not make it useless. The form of the ideal state exists eternally, and we can strive toward it, approximate it, be inspired by it, even if we never fully achieve it. This is true of all ideals. Perfect justice, perfect beauty, perfect goodness may not exist in this world of change and imperfection, but they exist as forms, as standards, as goals that guide our striving. And perhaps this is enough. Perhaps it is even better this way, because it means we always have something to reach toward, always a higher vision to inspire us. Rest in this thought, that ideals matter, that envisioning the good, even if unattainable, shapes and elevates our efforts. Plato spent the second half of his life teaching at the academy, writing his dialogues, refining his philosophy. He traveled again to Syracuse, hoping to educate a young tyrant and create a philosopher king in reality, but the experiment failed, and he returned older and perhaps wiser to his olive grove, to his students, to his patient exploration of eternal truths. He wrote in the form of dialogues, conversations, because he had learned from Socrates that philosophy is not a set of doctrines to be memorized, but a living process of questioning and answering, of testing ideas against counter-arguments, of slowly, gently approaching truth through dialogue. Most of his dialogues feature Socrates as the main speaker, and so his teacher's voice lives on, immortalized, though now expanded, deepened, transformed by Plato's own profound insights. It is an act of love and memory, this writing, a student's tribute to his teacher, and in doing so, Plato gave the world something precious, a model of how to think, how to question, how to seek wisdom through conversation. As we prepare to move onward to the next generation of philosophical wisdom, let us rest here a moment longer in Plato's world of forms, in his vision of eternal truths beyond the flux of physical reality. There is something deeply restful about this philosophy, something that quiets the anxious mind. If the forms are eternal and unchanging, then truth is not a matter of opinion or fashion or temporary circumstance. Beauty does not cease to exist when beautiful things fade. Justice does not disappear when injustice prevails. Goodness remains constant and real, even when good people suffer. The physical world may be uncertain, chaotic, full of change and loss, but beyond it, in that realm your soul once knew and can know again, there is permanence, order, perfection. This does not mean we should ignore the physical world or neglect our responsibilities here. Plato did not advocate withdrawal or resignation, but it does mean we can hold our experiences in this world more lightly, more peacefully, knowing that they are not the whole story, not the deepest reality. When you encounter beauty in this life, in music, in nature, in a kind gesture, in a moment of insight, you are glimpsing, however briefly, the eternal form of beauty itself. And that form can never be taken from you because it exists beyond time, beyond change, beyond loss. The same is true when you act justly, when you seek wisdom, when you cultivate virtue. You are participating in eternal forms, aligning your soul with what is most real and most lasting. And this participation is its own reward, immediate and intrinsic, not dependent on outcomes or recognition or success in worldly terms. Plato's academy continued for centuries after his death, nearly 1,000 years in various forms, making it one of the longest-lived institutions in human history. Countless students walked its olive-shaded paths, debated in its colonnades, absorbed its teachings. And though the physical academy eventually closed, its spirit, its method, its vision never died. It lives on in every university, every school, every place where human beings gather to pursue wisdom through dialogue and reason. It lives on in the very idea that there are truths worth seeking, ideals worth striving for, a good that transcends personal preference or cultural convention. And it lives on in you whenever you pause to question your assumptions, whenever you look beyond surface appearances to deeper meaning, whenever you remember that the most real things are not those you can see and touch, but those you can only contemplate with your mind and soul. Rest now, gently, peacefully, in this olive grove. Feel the coolness of the shade, the warmth of the Mediterranean air, the timeless quality of philosophical inquiry. The forms are there, eternal and patient, waiting for you to remember them. And you will remember, perhaps in a dream tonight, perhaps in a moment of sudden insight tomorrow, perhaps gradually over years of living and learning. But you will remember because this knowledge is already within you, has always been within you, waiting only for the right moment to return to consciousness. Rest now. Simply rest. The forms are eternal, the truth is patient, and you, in your deepest self, are already connected to what is most real and most lasting. Simply rest. Simply rest. The forms are eternal. The truth is patient. And now, as you rest in this knowledge, we walk gently forward through time, moving from Plato's shaded academy into a new space of learning, a new approach to wisdom. The olive trees remain, but now we find ourselves walking along covered paths beneath colonnades where Aristotle walks with his students, teaching as they move, philosophy becoming a gentle peripatetic rhythm, a meditation in motion. Aristotle was Plato's student for nearly 20 years. Arriving at the academy as a young man of 17, his mind already sharp, already curious, already possessed of that rare combination of systematic thinking and wonder at the natural world. But where Plato's gaze turned upward toward eternal forms, Aristotle's attention turns gently, patiently, toward the world around us, toward the living, breathing, growing reality we can observe and understand. His Lyceum, established when he returned to Athens after years of travel and tutoring the young Alexander, becomes a place where philosophy embraces everything, where wisdom is found not by escaping the physical world, but by understanding it deeply, completely, with patient observation and careful thought. As we walk these covered paths, surrounded by gardens where plants are studied, where animals are observed, where the rhythms of nature are honored and examined, we feel a different kind of peace, the tranquility that comes from balance, from moderation, from understanding that wisdom is not separate from living, but is itself the art of living well. Aristotle's voice is calm, measured, systematic. He does not claim to remember eternal truths from before birth, as his teacher did. Instead, he observes, categorizes, analyzes, always with gentleness, always with the understanding that knowledge begins with wonder and culminates in understanding. And so we walk slowly, peacefully, along these covered paths, ready to explore a philosophy of balance, of virtue, found not in extremes, but in the golden mean, in that peaceful middle way that leads to human flourishing, to Eudaimonia, to the good life lived with wisdom and moderation. Aristotle teaches that virtue is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean relative to us, this being determined by reason and in the way that a person of practical wisdom would determine it. These words, so careful and precise, contain within them a revolution in how we understand the good life. For Aristotle, virtue is not something we possess by nature, nor is it simply knowledge, as Socrates taught. Instead, virtue is a habit developed through practice, refined through repetition, until acting virtuously becomes second nature to us. Imagine learning to play a musical instrument the way the fingers find the strings without conscious thought after years of gentle practice, or the way a skilled craftsperson's hands know their work without hesitation. This is how virtue operates, Aristotle explains, his voice steady and reassuring. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. And in each case, virtue lies in a mean between extremes. Courage, for example, is the mean between cowardice and recklessness. Too little courage, and we cannot face what must be faced. Too much, and we rush foolishly into danger. The courageous person, the person of practical wisdom, finds the balance, responds appropriately to each situation, neither fleeing nor foolishly charging forward. Generosity lies between stinginess and wastefulness. Proper pride lies between humility that denies our worth and arrogance that inflates it. In each case, the mean is not a mathematical midpoint, but a balanced response appropriate to circumstances, to persons, to the specific situation before us. This requires judgment, wisdom, the development of practical intelligence that Aristotle calls phronesis. As we walk these garden paths, we feel the wisdom of this teaching in our bodies. Not too fast, not too slow, not too tense, not too loose. A gentle balance, a sustainable rhythm. The golden mean is not compromise or mediocrity. It is excellence itself, the peak of human functioning, found not at extremes, but in that wise, balanced center where we can sustain a good life over time. Rest in this balance now. Feel how your breathing finds its own mean, not too shallow, not too deep. How your body naturally seeks equilibrium, temperature regulated, heartbeat steady. The golden mean is written into nature itself, Aristotle would say, and we, when we live virtuously, are simply aligning ourselves with the deep wisdom already present in the world around us. Eudaimonia. The word rolls gently through the evening air as we continue our slow walk through the Lyceum grounds, often translated as happiness, but meaning something deeper, richer, more complete, flourishing, thriving, the full realization of human potential over a complete life. Aristotle teaches that this is the highest good, the ultimate purpose of human existence, the goal toward which all our actions ultimately aim. But here is the gentle wisdom of his teaching. Eudaimonia is not a feeling or a momentary state. It is not pleasure, though a flourishing life will contain pleasure. It is not wealth, though moderate resources are helpful. It is not honor, though the virtuous person will be honored by those who recognize virtue. Eudaimonia is an activity, a way of being, the active exercise of our highest capacities in accordance with virtue, sustained throughout a complete life. Imagine a great tree, Aristotle might say, its roots deep in good soil, its trunk strong and balanced, its branches reaching outward in natural proportion, its leaves turning sunlight into life. The tree is flourishing not in a single moment, but in its entire being, its complete functioning as what it most truly is. So too with human beings. We flourish when we are fully engaged in activities appropriate to our nature, when we exercise our capacity for reason, for virtue, for friendship, for learning, for contemplation. The happiest life, Aristotle teaches, is a life of virtuous activity, particularly the exercise of our highest faculty, which is contemplation, the activity of philosophical wisdom. But this contemplation is not separate from ordinary life. It emerges from it, is supported by it, returns to inform it. The philosopher needs friends, needs adequate resources, needs a well-ordered community, needs health and time and peace. Eudaimonia is not escape from human life, but the fullest engagement with it, lived with wisdom and virtue and balance. As you rest now, breathing slowly, peacefully, consider your own life not as a series of isolated moments, but as a whole, as a complete activity, a continuous unfolding. What would it mean to flourish? Not to grasp at fleeting pleasures or avoid all pain, but to develop your capacities, to act virtuously, to engage fully with what is most human in you? The question is not urgent, it is gentle, patient, to be contemplated slowly over time as we continue walking these peaceful paths where wisdom is understood not as escape, but as the art of living well, here, in this world, in this life, with balance and virtue and reason as our guides. In a quiet corner of the Lyceum, beneath a fig tree heavy with late summer fruit, we pause to observe as Aristotle examines the world around him with patient attention. He has collected hundreds of observations, studying plants and animals, weather patterns and celestial movements, the customs of different cities, and the constitutions of various governments. Philosophy, for Aristotle, extends to everything, embraces everything, seeks to understand the principles underlying all of existence. He divides knowledge into three great branches, each with its own method, its own purpose, its own dignity. Theoretical knowledge, which seeks truth for its own sake, including physics, mathematics, and theology, the contemplation of what is highest and most divine. Practical knowledge, which guides action and includes ethics and politics, the wisdom of how to live well as individuals and communities. And productive knowledge, the knowledge of making, including all the arts and crafts by which humans shape the world around them. Each form of knowledge has its place, its value, its contribution to human flourishing. The philosopher who contemplates eternal truths, the statesman who orders the city justly, the craftsperson who creates beautiful and useful objects, all participate in wisdom, each in their own way. As we rest here beneath the fig tree, watching the gentle movement of leaves in the evening breeze, we feel the profound peace of this comprehensive vision. Nothing is excluded from philosophy's gentle gaze. The smallest insect deserves careful observation. The growth of a seed into a plant reveals principles of change and development. The friendship between two people illuminates the nature of the good. Everything is connected, everything meaningful, everything part of a comprehensible order that reason can gradually come to understand. Aristotle speaks of four causes, four ways of explaining why things are as they are. The material cause, what something is made of. The formal cause, what makes it the kind of thing it is. The efficient cause, what brought it into being. And the final cause, the purpose toward which it naturally moves. A seed contains within it, potentially, the mature plant it will become. An acorn's nature is to become an oak. A human infant's nature is to develop into a rational, virtuous adult. Everything in nature has a telos, an end toward which it naturally strives. And for humans, that end is eudaimonia, flourishing achieved through the exercise of virtue and reason. Rest in this order. Feel how natural it is, how peaceful, to understand that everything has its place, its purpose, its path of development. You too have a nature, a potential waiting to unfold, capacities waiting to be exercised, virtues waiting to be developed, not through strain or force, but through patient practice, gentle habit, the slow cultivation of wisdom over a lifetime. The fig tree does not struggle to produce fruit. It simply follows its nature, given time and proper conditions. So too with human flourishing, Aristotle whispers, follow your nature, develop your capacities, exercise virtue, live in balance, and eudaimonia will emerge naturally, like fruit in its season. The evening deepens over the Lyceum, and our walking slows to barely a movement, more a gentle swaying, a breathing rhythm, as we approach the most peaceful of Aristotle's teachings. He writes that if happiness is activity in accordance with virtue, it is reasonable that it should be in accordance with the highest virtue, and this will be that of the best thing in us. This best thing, this highest faculty, is nous, the contemplative intellect, the capacity for philosophical wisdom. The life of contemplation, Aristotle teaches, is the happiest life, the most divine, the closest we come to the eternal and unchanging while still remaining human. But his teaching is so gentle here, so understanding of human limitations. We are not gods. We cannot contemplate continuously. We need rest, food, friendship, engagement with practical affairs. The purely contemplative life is an ideal toward which we reach, not a demand that denies our embodied reality. And so we find ourselves here, at the end of this long, peaceful day, in that borderland between activity and rest, between engagement and withdrawal, practicing a kind of gentle contemplation that is itself a taste of eudaimonia. As you breathe slowly, deeply, you are engaged in an activity that is uniquely human. This capacity to step back from immediate concerns, to reflect, to wonder, to seek understanding. Philosophy began in wonder, Aristotle teaches, and wonder is still its beating heart. Look around at the darkening gardens of the Lyceum, at the stars beginning to emerge in the deepening blue above, at the olive trees and colonnades fading into peaceful shadow. Everything here invites contemplation, gentle attention, the exercise of that highest capacity for understanding. You do not need to achieve anything now. You do not need to solve any problem or reach any conclusion. Simply rest in this contemplative state, this peaceful attention to wisdom, to beauty, to truth. Aristotle believed that in contemplation we touch something eternal, that our minds in the act of understanding participate in the divine intellect itself. Whether or not this is so, there is profound peace in this activity, this gentle turning of attention toward what is highest, most beautiful, most worthy of our wonder. The golden mean has brought us here, to this balanced state between waking and sleeping, between thinking and resting, between engagement and peace. Eudaimonia, flourishing, is not far from you now. It is here, in this gentle exercise of your highest capacities, in this moment of calm reflection, in this balanced state of peaceful contemplation. Aristotle's voice fades now into the evening air, joining with Plato's and Socrates before him, all these voices of wisdom becoming a single gentle stream of truth, flowing quietly, patiently, carrying you toward rest. The Lyceum gardens grow dark and peaceful. The walking stops. And you, having traveled from the marketplace through the academy to the Lyceum, having explored question and form and golden mean, now simply rest, contemplating in the gentlest way, or perhaps no longer contemplating at all, simply being, simply resting, simply at peace. The philosophers have given you their wisdom. Now they invite you simply to rest in it, to let it work quietly within you, to sleep, to dream, to flourish in your own way, following your own nature toward your own unfolding. Rest now, simply rest. The wisdom will remain, patient and eternal, waiting for you whenever you return. But for now, simply rest. Rest now, simply rest. The wisdom will remain, patient and eternal, waiting for you whenever you return. And as you rest, imagine yourself transported to a place of profound stillness, a hillside garden overlooking Athens in the deepest hours of night. The Mediterranean sky stretches above you, vast and ancient, the same sky that sheltered Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle as they walked and wondered beneath these very stars. The air is warm and gentle, carrying with it the scent of cypress and olive, of stone warmed by day, and now cooling in the darkness. You are lying on soft ground, perhaps cushioned by woolen blankets, perhaps simply held by the earth itself, and you are safe, completely safe, in this timeless moment between ancient wisdom and eternal rest. The city below is quiet now, its bustling marketplace stilled, its philosophical conversations paused, its citizens dreaming their own dreams. And here, in the sacred space between waking and sleeping, between question and answer, between seeking and finding, you can simply be, simply rest, simply allow the wisdom of three great minds to settle around you like starlight, gentle and illuminating, asking nothing of you, simply offering their presence, their questions, their eternal pursuit of what is good and true and beautiful. Let us rest here together beneath these ancient stars and allow the voices of philosophy to become as soft as breath, as rhythmic as waves, as soothing as the gentlest lullaby. There is nothing you must understand, nothing you must remember, nothing you must do. The wisdom is here. It will remain. And for now, you need only rest and listen and allow yourself to drift on the current of these timeless thoughts, these eternal questions, these peaceful contemplations of the good life. What is wisdom? The question floats above you like a constellation, and you need not answer it, need not solve it, need only let it exist in the darkness, beautiful and mysterious. Socrates believed that wisdom begins with knowing what you do not know, with the courage to admit uncertainty, with the humility to question even what seems most certain. And there is something deeply restful in this, isn't there? Something liberating in not having to know everything, in not having to be certain, in simply being willing to ask, to wonder, to remain open to truth wherever it might be found. What is wisdom? Perhaps it is this very openness, this very willingness to rest in questions, rather than demanding immediate answers. The stars above you have witnessed countless questions, countless seekers, countless philosophers lying awake in the darkness, wondering. And the stars remain constant and calm, neither answering nor refusing to answer, simply shining, simply being, simply offering their light to all who look upward. Socrates walked through Athens asking questions, not to show his cleverness, but to awaken understanding in others, to help them discover what they already knew deep within themselves. And perhaps that is what is happening now, as you rest here beneath these stars. Perhaps the wisdom you seek is not something foreign or distant, not something you must strive to acquire, but something already present within you, waiting only for stillness, for quiet, for this precise moment of rest to reveal itself. What is wisdom? It is knowing that you are enough. It is understanding that the examined life, the thoughtful life, the virtuous life, is not about perfection, but about attention, about care, about the gentle daily practice of choosing what is good. And you can rest in this. You can let go of the burden of knowing everything, understanding everything, being everything. You can simply be here now, beneath these stars, breathing slowly, resting deeply, allowing wisdom to be what it truly is, not a destination, but a journey, not an achievement, but a way of being, not a prize to be won, but a gift to be received in moments just like this one. What is virtue? Another question rises like incense in the night air, gentle and fragrant, requiring nothing of you but your peaceful attention. Plato believed that virtue exists as an eternal form, a perfect pattern in a realm beyond this changing world, and that our task is to remember it, to recognize it, to align ourselves with its unchanging truth. And Aristotle taught that virtue is found in balance, in the golden mean between extremes, in the careful cultivation of good habits practiced daily until they become as natural as breathing. And Socrates insisted that virtue is knowledge, that to truly know what is good is to do what is good, that no one errs willingly but only through ignorance or confusion. 3 voices, 3 approaches, and yet all circling the same luminous truth, that there is a good way to live, a way that brings flourishing and peace, a way that harmonizes the soul and brings us into right relationship with ourselves, with others, with the universe itself. What is virtue? As you rest here in the darkness, beneath the patient stars, you need not define it or defend it or fully understand it. You need only sense it, the way you might sense a presence in a darkened room, the way you might feel the warmth of sunlight, even with eyes closed. Virtue is kindness without calculation. Virtue is courage, not in the absence of fear, but in acting rightly despite fear. Virtue is wisdom that knows its own limits. Virtue is justice that sees each being clearly. Virtue is moderation that neither grasps nor rejects. Virtue is the golden mean, the balanced path, the way of living that brings not excitement or drama, but something far more precious, deep, abiding contentment. Eudaimonia, Aristotle called it, flourishing. Not happiness as a fleeting emotion, but as a way of being, a life well lived, a soul properly ordered and aligned with its own best nature. And you can rest in this vision. You can allow yourself to trust that virtue is not some impossible standard, but simply the practice of choosing well again and again, gently and without self-judgment, learning from mistakes, celebrating growth, always returning to the question, what does wisdom ask of me now? Not what is perfect, not what is impressive, but what is good, what is true, what is aligned with your own flourishing and the flourishing of all. What is the good life? This final question settles over you like a blanket, warm and soft and deeply comforting. The good life is not a life without challenges, without sorrows, without the inevitable difficulties that come to every human soul. The good life, according to these ancient philosophers, is a life of awareness, of attention, of choosing to engage with existence thoughtfully and virtuously. It is the examined life that Socrates championed, the life that asks questions, that refuses to drift through the days on autopilot, that brings consciousness to even the smallest choices and encounters. It is the philosophical life that Plato described, oriented toward eternal truth, remembering through study and contemplation those perfect forms that give meaning and structure to this changing world of appearances. It is the balanced life that Aristotle taught, following the golden mean, cultivating virtues through practice, seeking Eudaimonia through virtuous activity and contemplation. And as you rest here, breathing slowly, releasing the tensions of the day, allowing your body to grow heavy and your mind to grow quiet, you might sense that the good life is also simply this: the willingness to be present, to be here, to accept what is, while still striving gently toward what might be. The good life does not require grand achievements or public recognition. The good life is lived in small moments of integrity, in quiet acts of kindness, in the private victories of choosing patience over anger, understanding over judgment, love over fear. The good life is the life that tends to the soul as a gardener tends to a garden, not forcing growth but creating conditions for flourishing, removing weeds of vice, planting seeds of virtue, watering daily with attention and care. And you are living this life now, in this very moment of rest, as you take time to pause, to reflect, to allow ancient wisdom to nourish your modern soul. You are living the good life whenever you choose awareness over distraction, whenever you treat yourself and others with compassion, whenever you ask what truly matters and have the courage to align your actions with your answers. The voices of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle blend together now, becoming indistinct, becoming a gentle hum of agreement that the good life is within reach, is always within reach, is in fact your birthright as a conscious being capable of choice, capable of growth, capable of flourishing in your own unique way. And now, beneath these eternal stars, beneath this ancient sky that has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of countless seekers, the endless human conversation about meaning and purpose and the good life, now you can simply rest. The questions remain beautiful and unanswered, patient and eternal. What is wisdom? It is here, in this moment of not knowing, in this acceptance of mystery. What is virtue? It is here, in your willingness to grow, to learn, to choose what is good according to your best understanding. What is the good life? It is here, in this breath, in this moment of peace, in this gentle surrender to rest. You need not remember everything you have heard. You need not understand everything that has been shared. The wisdom of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle is not meant to be grasped, but to be absorbed, not meant to be conquered, but to be companioned, not meant to burden, but to lighten, to guide, to comfort. And so let yourself drift now. Let yourself float on the current of these thoughts like a leaf on a gentle stream, trusting the flow, releasing the need to control or comprehend. The stars above you are fading slightly as your eyes grow heavy, or perhaps it is your consciousness that is fading, slipping peacefully toward sleep, toward dreams, toward the deep rest that your body and mind so richly deserve. Philosophy at its heart is love of wisdom, and wisdom at its heart is simply this: knowing how to live, how to be, how to flourish. And you are doing that now, in this moment, as you allow yourself to rest, to restore, to regenerate. The voices of the ancient philosophers grow softer now, becoming whispers, becoming breath, becoming silence. But their presence remains, a gentle companionship in the darkness, a reminder that you are part of an eternal conversation, that your questions are worthy, that your life matters, that your pursuit of the good is itself a form of virtue. Rest now, deeply and completely. Let the wisdom work quietly within you, beneath the threshold of conscious thought, in the fertile darkness of dreams and deep sleep. The questions will wait. The philosophers will wait. The stars will continue their ancient patterns overhead. And you can simply be here, simply rest here, simply allow yourself to drift into perfect, peaceful, restorative sleep, knowing that you are enough, that you are on your way, that the examined life you are living, even imperfectly, is indeed a life worth living. Rest now. The wisdom remains. The good life awaits. And all is well, deeply and eternally well, beneath these ancient stars. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.